Welcome back to For the Home Cook. My name is Cheryl. The whole point of this series is to hopefully save us a little bit of money on our grocery bills. So I know that budgets are getting smaller, but prices are getting higher. And so what I aim to do is help you guys with a little bit of money saving tips. So the theme of today is $10 meals. So all the meals that I have today are going to be right around $10. A few of them are right below that. One of them is just a little bit above that, but it all kind of averages out. I spent about $42 on all the meals that we do today. Now, if you think about it, the USDA, they have a food budget plan for, up to 4 people or however many people that are inside of your home. So if we take a household of 4, 2 adults, 2 kids, they're spending an average of about $940 a month on a kind of low budget meal plan. And that's eating healthy. Now, I'm not saying don't eat healthy. Please, by all means, the healthier that you can eat, the better. But the purpose of this series is to go, okay, well, how can we take that $940 and lessen that for our household? So what I have today, if you did 4 meals, let's say 3 meals a day, all of them are $40. At the end of the month, you're going to be spending about $850, which is saving us about $130, $120 compared to what the USDA says that you'll spend on a 4-person household. So let's talk about a few of these meals. The first one that I'm going to do is a shrimp scampi. Now, I know this one is not friendly with the family if the family does not like shrimp scampi, but I like this recipe a lot. So we're going to put the recipe up there. What I'm doing right now is I'm going to put some shrimp into this pan. This pan has a little bit of butter and olive oil. And what that's going to do is it's going to help cook it and also give it a little bit of flavor with that butter. So I'm going to put these shrimp down here. Great thing about shrimp is that they don't take a long time to cook. And relatively, when it comes to seafood, they're one of the more kind of budget-friendly seafoods that we have. So we're going to turn that up about medium-high heat. Along with this, I've also got some angel hair pasta. This is one of the cheaper pastas. It makes a lot. It doesn't cook for a long time, maybe 3 to 4 minutes. So that's what I have here in this bowl. I've already cooked that off. And then we've got some garlic. We have got some lemon. And if you go to the store, they have a packet of shrimp scampi seasoning. I did not find that at my store, so I did not get any. But we're going to make that from scratch. Perfectly fine. So I've got some parsley here. I'm going to put some of this down. We're going to season the shrimp, and then once we pull the shrimp out, we're also going to season the sauce. I've seen a lot of different recipes on this where you can do it with, you can use like white wine or chicken broth to make a sauce. And by all means, if you have some in your pantry, this is a great time to use that because you probably got it for that one recipe. And now you're sitting here going, I don't need it for anything else. So a good time to use that. I think that we're going to have enough to make a sort of sauce. We'll see if I'm right or wrong about that. So like I said, the shrimp do not take a long time to cook. You can see we're starting to get a little bit pink here. I'm going to turn it up just a little bit more. So this meal, when I did all of this together, cost about $10.22. Minus, I didn't do, if you didn't find the seasoning packet, then you may have to get a seasoning or two. The butter and olive oil, I'm going to assume that you have at your house. So if you don't, that may cost you a few dollars extra. I will tell you, if you don't have olive oil, don't run out and get it for this one recipe. Even if you use butter, that is still going to give you a little bit of a sauce. So you could also cook off your shrimp, save some of your pasta water, and then just use your pasta water as kind of the base for your sauce. If you don't have any chicken broth or chicken stock, that will also help. So if you've ever made shrimp scampi, it's one of my favorite meals. Sometimes it does not have pasta, depending on how you grew up making it. We didn't usually use pasta. It was just kind of like an appetizer or just kind of cooking in its own sauce. But this is a great way to use that recipe, something that hopefully the people in your household like. I know some shrimp, the shrimp that I got here, these are small, peeled and deveined, and I think it had, I want to say like 24 to 40 or something like that of the little shrimp. So the smaller shrimp you get, the more that you're going to get, and it's going to go further than if you get, the colossal shrimp where you only have maybe 6 or 7 or 10 versus what we have here. So we'll cook this for just a little bit longer. Then I'm going to go ahead and grab something to put these in once they're done. We're just going to kind of scoop these out. And I know we talked a few weeks ago about buying in bulk, and that is where the next part of this is going to come up because we're going to use some garlic. Now, like I said, You can go to Sam's, you can buy this huge thing of garlic for about right under $6. Put that into a food processor and then put it into these little freeze bags. And then once it's frozen, just kind of cut these little blocks. So you can see I have a whole block here of fresh garlic, one here and one here. So I've got 4. Now I don't measure garlic, I measure it with my heart. I don't necessarily go by the recipe. So I can't tell you how many cloves this is, but you know, use one, start there and see where you go. All right, so these are done. Like I said, they only take about 3 to 4 minutes to cook, which is why I like shrimp. It doesn't take a long time, and it kind of tells you when it's done. So we're gonna scoop these out. Like I said, so all of this here, this butter and this olive oil is gonna be the basis for your sauce. And the sauce on this is so simple. If you get your seasoning, that's what's gonna kind of build with your sauce. If you don't find that seasoning packet, that's perfectly fine. Use whatever you think would go in that. So when I looked at the back of the one online, it had garlic, it had parsley, it had some onion powder. So you probably already have all of those things at home. Just go ahead and use those. There's no reason to go out and buy, I think the packet was like $2.50, almost $3 for a packet of stuff that you probably have at home and that you can just use instead. So I'm gonna use, I love garlic. Let's not play around here. So I'm gonna use 2. I'm gonna start cooking this down. And then if you didn't season your shrimp, this is gonna be that time to go ahead and season. I'm gonna keep it real simple. You can already smell that garlic. This is my favorite part about cooking, is anything that involves garlic. So we'll add a little bit more salt, a little bit more pepper. I'm gonna do a little bit of parsley. If you have fresh parsley, that is also a good option. It's not, it's very, very inexpensive, and you may or may not have it on hand. It's not one of those things that people just carry in their house all the time. So don't feel like you have to go out and buy parsley if you already have it up in the cabinet. And then we're also going to add some lemon juice. So I'm gonna do, I'll do that half and then just a little bit more. You don't want the garlic to cook for too long, maybe 1 to 2 minutes. You do not want to overcook garlic. I like the flavor of it, most people do not. All right, so we'll stir that up. Now here's the easy part and the fun part. We're just gonna start adding everything back in. So we'll add our shrimp back in. Once again, those are already cooked. If you have the already cooked shrimp, that will cut down on that cooking time, but you know, why not cook your own shrimp? That way you don't get weird shrimp at the end. So what I did with this, I just cooked this for 3 to 4 minutes and then put some olive oil on it to help it not stick. It probably will still stick. If you do this at home, you're probably gonna have like the pan that you cooked it in. So you can pull some of that pasta water and add it in here. So that way you can kind of loosen up the pasta and then also kind of thin out that sauce. So you can see we don't have like a lot of sauce on this one, and this is all to your taste. So if you look at this and you're like, I wish it was a little more saucy, go ahead and get either some chicken broth or some white wine and cook that down in that process before you put your pasta in there. And then you're gonna have a better sauce. Really up to your liking. All right, so like I said, so this meal here, this cost me about $10.22. So just right above that $10 mark. But look at how much you're getting. I still have a bunch of pasta left, and so you could put as much or as little pasta as you want into this dish and then make as much or as little sauce as you want. To be honest, you're being pretty generous on your shrimp because there's a lot of shrimp in that package. And then you can serve this up with whatever you would like. If you have some vegetables in the freezer, you can also put those in that cooking process. You could cook those vegetables down as well with that shrimp. and make you kind of like a vegetable shrimp scampi. You could also just put some vegetables on the side, especially frozen vegetables. They're gonna be super cheap, depending on what you get. Broccoli is really cheap, green beans are pretty cheap. You could even get fancy and get some frozen asparagus, put it in the microwave, and then put that in this process, and then you kind of have this like buttery garlic asparagus to go next to your dish. But look how much this made. Once again, I still have pasta left, so if I had a bigger pan, I could have put the rest of the pasta in here, made a little bit more sauce, and then that's gonna feed well over 4 people if you go by serving size. I know sometimes we don't, we go by our heart, and that's perfectly fine. So I just served this with some French or Italian bread because they're $1 a loaf and they're super affordable. You can toast it, you don't have to, but there you go. So we have this huge meal that would feed several people. All right, so that's meal number 1, still coming right around that $10 mark. Let's go to meal number 2. So this one is going to be a broccoli cheddar soup. And I know you're like, it is not the winter time. Why do we have broccoli cheddar soup? Because soup is cheap and it feeds a lot of people. And this one especially is going to be pretty affordable. So what I've done here is at the store, you can find this over in the soup section. This is going to be a broccoli cheddar soup that you just bring water to a boil. You add this in here. It makes 8 servings. It cooks for about 10 minutes. So it's super, super fast. But why not just zhuzh this up with stuff that we already have? I don't know about you. I like cheddar broccoli soup, but let's add a few more things to it. So I took this, I've got this in this pan. So we had 8 cups of water that we brought up to a boil. Let this cook for about 10 minutes. Add in whatever seasonings that you want. So salt, pepper, garlic, any of those things. You know, you can use up the rest of your garlic we have over there. And this is what we have. Now, we're not just gonna leave this as is. Let's zhuzh this up. Let's make it better than it probably already is. So what I have here is a bag of steamed broccoli. I like steamed broccoli because 1, it's delicious. 2, this bag is like $1.16. So super, super cheap. And it's just gonna add to the cheddar broccoli that's already in this soup. So the soup has broccoli in it, obviously, but they're little like chunks of broccoli. So we're gonna add this in here. You can steam it, or you could just add it in there once you stir everything together. You can put your broccoli in there and then just let the soup steam it for that 10 minutes, whichever one that you want to do. Now, my favorite thing in life is cheese. So what we're gonna do is, this is a 2-cup package. Once again, it already has cheese in it, but why not just make it better with even more cheese? So we'll put about half of the bag in there. This is all up to preference. You don't have to put the cheese in there if you don't want to. You could save all this and put it on the top. It's whatever you would like to do. So we're gonna stir this around. We'll give this a few minutes. And it's been simmering for more than 10 minutes, so it should melt this pretty quickly. If you steam your broccoli and then throw it in there, it still should be warm because of the microwave. So we don't have to wait for that to really heat up. So with this meal, let's look here. So like I said, $10 meals. This one was $7.99, makes 8 servings. So we're well under that $10 mark, or $2. So you could even buy something else for $2 and get up to that $10 mark if you really wanted to. But I like that this one's a little less, because then when we get to one that's above $10, we kind of even ourselves out. Listen, I love a good cheese pool, even with a measuring cup. All right, so I've got that. We're gonna add a little bit more cheese on top. You could also, if you wanted to kind of make this better, you could get some croutons. You could get some of those like the crispy little jalapenos or crispy onions, and put those on top to add like an extra crunch to it. You could get, if you have some leftover bacon bits that you had for a meal, you could also do that. I see Andy over here. I know he wants a bite or 2 of this. We just served it with some bread. Once again, we have that whole loaf of bread. It's only $1, so we can turn around. We can use this. $7.99. Andy Justice cannot believe it. All right, so we got 2 more. So now let's go ahead and head on over to our hot turkey sandwiches. This one is so simple. I like this because you can use whatever you want in it. So it doesn't have to be turkey, it can be roast beef, it can be ham, it can be bologna for all I care, whatever you are willing to afford at your time when you go to do your grocery shopping. Nothing is off limits with this one, which I really love. All right, so just like it sounds, hot turkey sandwich. So what I've got here are an 8-pack of hamburger buns. I'm gonna do this instead of really fancy breads or really fancy, you know, a loaf of bread. Doesn't have to be fancy. But this was it was a little more than $1. It's gonna make 8 servings. If you have leftover bread, you can use that. But when we look at cost effectiveness, doing this in 8 servings seems a little more cost effective unless you get maybe, you know, the off-brand bread. You can probably make more sandwiches. You're not going to pay too much more than the $1, I think $16 or $1.20 that I used on this. So we've got our 4 buns here. And these are going to stand up to the heat of the oven. If you have off-brand like sandwich bread, it's probably going to be a little bit thinner. It may not stand up to being put in the oven for 20 minutes. So take what you will with that. If you trust the bread that you bought or you don't care, then use that. All right, super simple. So we've got some oven roasted turkey here. Move these chips off to the side. And if I can open this, it's like child lock over here. All right, so we have this really thin oven roasted turkey. I know you're saying, I thought you said there were 8. There are 8. I just put half already into the oven so that you guys can see what we're working with. So this will take about 2 pieces. I think we'll have just enough for 8. Probably a little bit more. You don't want to add too much to these because they're going to have to sit in the oven for longer. And then you either run the risk of them burning or not heating all the way through. So take your pick. I'm going to put a few extra pieces. I'm going to run that risk today, just so I don't have leftovers. All right, so we've got that. Now you get to pick whatever cheese that you want. So I like turkey and Swiss. You can do turkey and cheddar, turkey and provolone, turkey and whatever. All of these cheeses in this quantity were the same price. So I don't really care what you use. If you have, maybe you're doing sandwiches and you have some leftovers, you can go back and just use whatever you have left over, even if it doesn't necessarily make sense. So roast beef and Swiss, or, you know, ham and Munster cheese, whatever you bought the week before, a great way to reuse this. So we'll put these on a pan. We're going to preheat our oven to 350. I put 2 bottoms together. That's okay. And then you can cover the top with maybe some melted butter. That's completely up to you. But this will go into the oven for about 20 minutes. And I already had some in the oven. I promise it's not as hot as you think it should be for me just picking these up with my hand, but that's fine. So I put a piece of foil on top. That way it melts everything without burning it. So you can do that for about 20 minutes and then 10-15 minutes and then take it off, uncover it for about 5 to 6 minutes and make sure everything is just toasty. I serve this up with chips. You can serve this up with whatever you want. Chips were really cost effective for me because it was only $2 for a bag, and you're gonna have a serving for everybody, so everybody can have a sandwich or 2 sandwiches, and then also have some chips as well. So as you can see there, this meal only costs $9.74. So very cost effective. We're getting under that $10 mark, which is where we want to be, and you're making 8 servings. So if you have 4 people, everyone gets 2. If you have 6 people, everyone gets 1, and then everyone fights over the last 2. So just make sure you put on your brass knuckles, or, you know, start a fight beforehand so you can really get in there and get those last 2 sandwiches. All right. Of course, I would move that as soon as you guys get it. All right, so there's that. We'll put these in the oven. We'll make those. Let's talk about our last one. So this one I really like because all of these things are easy to find, easy to put together. So this is a meatball sub. These ingredients, like I said, super, super simple. This one actually costs the most. It costs about $14, and that's because if you go to the store, they should have a container of fresh, not cooked meatballs. There's about 12, costs about $6. That's the one that I was going for. Well, when I went to the store, they didn't have that. So I had to get a bag of frozen meatballs and then just deal with it as we do. So this one was a little bit more, a little bit above $10 because I had to spend that extra $2 or so just to get the frozen meatballs. But if you can find some that are already cooked, or if you can find a lower quantity below $7, that's gonna help you in this meal. So what I've done is I took the meatballs, I put them in a pan, covered them in spaghetti sauce. You can find whatever spaghetti sauce that you want. If you have a favorite, cool. I think this one cost a little bit more than $1. So that's kind of where we're going on the budget for the spaghetti sauce. So I've got a loaf of Italian bread. Now, French bread, Italian bread, I don't care which one you get. They both cost $1 at most places. Italian bread, you're gonna get a wider sandwich. French bread, you're going to get kind of a longer, skinnier sandwich. So it's really up to you. If maybe you can add, you know, put more meatballs on this one versus a skinnier sandwich, go right ahead. So what we're gonna do is come in here, take out just a little bit of this bread. We're basically just making a boat for everything to go and to sit in. So there's two ways that you can do this. The directions that I have say to put the bread with the cheese in the oven, broil it for about 5 minutes, bring it out, put the meatballs on top, because your meatballs are going to be, you put the jar of sauce in here, you let those simmer for about 15-20 minutes. So these are already pre-cooked, so I don't have to worry about cooking them, and they're in the sauce, so now they're warm with this warm sauce as well. So you could put your cheese on here, put it, broil it, bring it out, put your meatballs on top, put your sandwich together, call it good. Or you could build this, put it in the oven for about 15-20 minutes and let everything melt together. Pros and cons. One, it's easier if you just put everything together and put it in the oven. The con, you may run the risk of it being soggy if you don't cook it all the way or for enough time. So, yeah, take that risk wherever you may. So what I did is went ahead and built everything together and then put it in the oven. I'm actually gonna put the cheese on this side because I made that nice little boat. So that's where I'm gonna put my meatballs. This one I think has 18, I think it calls for 18 frozen meatballs. Yeah, if you get the 12 pack, just use the 12 pack. If you get the bag like I got, there's like, I don't know, 98 it seems. There's at least 32 plus. So you can put however many. I just kind of eyeballed it on how many that I could put on one side and then just kind of went with that. You could also get, if you don't want to get just this one loaf of bread, you can also get like hoagie rolls. They're going to cost you just a little bit extra, but then everyone gets their own. And so you can put as many or as few meatballs and sauce. You know, everyone can kind of customize it to what they like. If you have a kid who doesn't like a lot of meatballs, cool. If you don't like a lot of sauce, cool. You can kind of customize that the way that you want, but it will cost you a little bit extra. And you know, we were kind of already over that $10 budget when we did this. So now I'm going to cover this with cheese. 350 degrees for about 15 to 20 minutes. You know, the meatballs are already cooked. If you get meatballs that are not cooked, go ahead and pre-cook them in a skillet, put them in the dill with sauce, and then make sure that everything's cooked. So that when you put it in the oven, you're not waiting for it to cook and you're not hoping that it's all the way cooked. You already have one that's cooked. Speaking of already having one that's cooked, that's what I have over here. It's the magic of TV. All right, let's see what we're looking here. So I put the sandwiches in there, this on at the same time. So now you have a whole meatball sub. This one has like the coolest little house of bread. So it has a little hole in there, so you can put your leftover meatballs in there. You can stuff more cheese in there, which is what I would recommend. as a expert, non-expert, just shove some more cheese in there, or just cut it up and serve it just like that. So if you do the whole thing together, you're going to get anywhere between, I would say 8 to 10 servings, just depending on how big or small that you want to cut this. Obviously, if you do 4 servings, somebody's getting half of this. You may look at that and be like, that is way too much. And I would probably agree with you. So you could do this into thirds, you know, each half into thirds. You could just cut this in half. Make sure that you have a sharp knife, which I did not get. If not, then you're just going to murder it. And it's not going to look good at all. Why am I trying to murder this thing? All right. We're going to try one more knife. If that doesn't work, you know, you can figure it out. You know how to cut a sandwich. You shouldn't have to watch me do that. All right, so that's a quarter of a sandwich right there. So you can decide if that is enough or not enough for you and your family members. And then with this, you know, we talk about sides. You don't have to have a side at all. But if you wanted to, you could, first of all, have Parmesan cheese. You can put that on the pasta. You can also put it on this. You can also put, you know, red pepper or, you know, whatever you would normally put on a meatball sub or a pizza. You could do that as well. We're going to put that on there. And then to serve with this, I just did a side of zucchini and squash. It's one of the cheaper vegetables that you can find in the frozen section, especially in the summertime when zucchini and squash, just fresh zucchini and squash, is in season, and so it's going to be cheaper. It's one of the cheaper vegetables that you can make a side with. So like I said, this meal cost me about $14.30. The reason why it's a little bit above 10 is because instead of spending $5 on meatballs, I spent $7. So in theory, we would have been around the $12 mark. Still a few dollars extra, but we did save on the other 3 meals. So it still averages out to being $42 for everything that you're looking at here. We have 8 servings of this. We have 8 servings of soup. We have anywhere between, depending on how much sandwich you want, 8 servings of your meatball sub, and then of course, at least 4 servings of your pasta dish here. So $42.50 for this whole thing. The hope is for this series that you save some money as you go grocery shopping, because I know that our budgets are getting smaller. I know that things are getting more expensive. So where you can eat healthy, absolutely do that. But if you're needing some meals that are gonna feed the family, feed yourself, feed a crowd, and still be cost effective, $42. Now we have dinner covered for almost the entire week. You can do leftovers on Friday if there are. You can save back, you know, there's your sandwiches and make the other 4 on a different day. The pasta, you could cut that in half and make that into 2 different days of meals. The soup, you can put that in the refrigerator and you can save that for another day. And then of course your meatball subs, you can make that as much or as little as you want. You get the hoagie rolls, you can make those, you know, 2 at a time or 4 at a time and still have a few extra. So really cost effective meals. Everything costing around $10, a little more, a little less, but still close to that $10 meal. Thank you so much for joining us today. We'll see you back next week.